Hey guys, what's up? It's me, Zach, and I'm going to be doing some live editing right now for you guys. Just going to be taking you through some just kind of like an editing workflow that I do on every single kind of photo set that I go through. So basically, you guys are feel free to ask questions and just kind of chime in with anything you have. I will say that I'm no expert, and there's probably way better ways to do a lot of the stuff that I'm going to be doing. But needless to say, this might be able to give you a little insight as to how I do my stuff. So I'm just going to go ahead and just get this shared out, and then we will continue editing. I'm going to be sharing my screen so you guys will be able to see everything I'm doing here. And yeah. Okay, now that we got that all shared out on Facebook, we can get into it here. Let me start sharing my screen with you guys so you can see that. So today we're going to be editing some photos of Erica. I shot these over a year ago actually and just never edited them. Sorry, Erica. She's chill though, and she said it's okay, but I wanted to make sure that I get her photos eventually here. So the first photo here, she actually was just visiting. So we were at the hotel. There was a snowstorm this day, so we didn't go anywhere. So we were just kind of shooting around. The lighting's not the best on all these, but we were just kind of messing around. This one's in the hallway. A few things that I really like about this photo are the leading lines that we have right here with the lights, and also just in general with the hallway. I would like to change this photo a little bit if I could go a little bit wider so we have a little bit more of these lines and we just can see more of the hallway. That would be one thing that I'd tweak. And then also it would have been nice to have a light, but I didn't shoot with lights at all for the first 2 years that I was doing photography. So fun fact. But let's get into it here. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and bring the exposure up a little bit. Not too much because we don't want it to be overdone. I kind of want to keep the moody feel of this photo with the shadows that we have going down the hallway. That is another thing that I do like about this photo. Going to bring the contrast down a little bit. That's going to brighten the photo up a little bit. If you want to get it real moody, you can bring the contrast way up. Obviously, like the general concept of contrast is that you are making it more or less like stand off the backgroundy, if that makes sense. So the more contrast you have, the more it's going to like punch out, and the less contrast, the less it is, if you will. So we got some good highlights here. I'm going to bring those up a little bit. The shadows, I'm going to bring those down. The whites, can bring those up a little bit. Kind of want those lights to pop out. And then the blacks, I'm also going to bring down a little bit. So the next thing that I'm going to do, because it's really bothering me, is I'm just going to go ahead and straighten this photo out. You can see how the ceiling is not really straight. It's not square. So I'm just going to square that up a little bit using the guidelines. And then I'm going to crop this to 4:5 for Instagram. So bring that up a little bit. So this is in here. We're rocking with the rule of thirds crop right now. So when you're shooting your photos, you can put your subject on these corners, and that's supposed to be more aesthetically pleasing, if you will, more visually appealing. But you can do whatever you want. You can break the rules whenever you want, however you want. But that's just a little tip, if you will. So I'm going to turn this a little bit more because I don't feel like it's straight. And now we got the 4x5 crop going. Okay, I'm wearing blue light glasses, so it's a little bit hard to tell the color temperature sometimes. So if I'm pulling my glasses on and off, looking like a grandpa, that's why, because I'm trying to make sure that I can see the color temperature. So it's a little bit warm for me. So the original temperature is 3100, but we're gonna bring that down to about 28, 21 to be exact. This is a little thing that I kind of neglected to learn for a while in photography that I use a lot more now, and it's really important, and that's the white balance. So I'm not going to explain it a ton right now, but just go on YouTube and watch some videos about white balance and just like the little intricacies. Figure out what the buttons on your camera all mean so that you can best utilize your skills and utilize your equipment and make your editing workflow the easiest it can be. But needless to say, we brought that temperature down a little bit, so she's a little bit less yellow. I'm liking that. So we're gonna come down here to the texture. I always generally bring my texture up a little bit, but with portraits you don't want to go too crazy. So texture, I'll go a little bit more nuts if it's like a landscape shot, something where you have like trees or rocks or water, something that's gonna have texture to it. Generally when you have a subject, you don't want to bring up a lot of texture because that's going to show like the imperfections on their face and anywhere else that generally we're actually trying to hide in photos, and we'll sometimes edit out. I generally don't like to edit a lot of stuff out like that because I don't want there to be unrealistic expectations for people. So texture goes up a little bit though, because I just like to give it a little bit in the hair, bring up some of the texture in the clothes. You can see the lines a little bit. Same thing with the clarity. I never take it over 10 though. Texture and clarity never over 10 on a portrait. This I'm gonna just take to 5. And then dehaze, you can do whatever the heck you want with that. This photo I don't really think I need to dehaze. It's not really hazy, so I'm gonna just bring that and leave that there. Vibrance, that's gonna affect your tones, your color tones. I think the vibrance is alright. I might bring that up a little bit, but not too much. And then classic me, I'm gonna bring these blacks up a little bit, give it that kind of like faded film look. I like how that's looking. Let me bring my brightness on my screen up. Whoa. Okay. Bring this other black up a little bit. Highlight down. Highlights. Whites down there. Okay. This just feels a little bit bright. Yeah. Whoa. Okay. So I mean, I'm not a perfect editor, and as you change other things, you might want to go back and fix more stuff. So don't be afraid to do that. You're never going to be great on the first go around. So the last thing I'm going to do here is maybe bring this orange saturation down a little bit. And then I'm going to call that one done. Now this isn't perfect, don't get me wrong, but whoa, hello. This edit is not perfect, do not get me wrong, but I'm just kind of trying to fly through, get these suckers cranked out, and get them off. Obviously there's a ton more you can do here, but I'm happy with what it looks like for the horrendous hotel lighting that we have going on here. So I don't really use presets, but I do copy my settings. So that's a little hack if you're shooting in similar lighting. edit one good photo, and then you can just bring your stuff in here and paste your settings in, and then just kind of tweak it how you want. So bring that down a little bit, crop this out, fix that hallway, get those lines straightened up. Boom, ba-doom, boom, boom. Same thing in this photo. Another thing that I really like, we got those long leading lines right here. That's a great little photography hack. I feel like that was one thing that I still very distinctly remember as being like something that I started to notice and do. Like, I learned about leading lines, and then I went out and shot kind of using that concept. Before that, I was just kind of aimlessly shooting. This is much earlier on, and I will say that it definitely, I was just like, damn, this took me to the next level. So definitely just consider leading lines. It's something that I highly suggest, highly recommend. Really easy to do. They're found everywhere. You can find them in the country. You can find them in the dang city. Out in the country, you might find some cornfields. You might find a nice windy road. You might have a little bit of maybe you're in a forest where they replanted and it's planted in like a bunch of good rows, So there's a lot of good ways to find lead lines in nature, and there's a lot of good ways, obviously, to find them in the city. They're fucking everywhere. Streets, alleyways, buildings, what else? And tons of stuff. I can only list like 5 things, but there's tons of them. You got to take my word for it. Alright, so hopping back in here. Whoa. Check on that live stream on Facebook, make sure we're still doing good. We are. Hopping back in, that photo's done. Same thing here, we're just gonna copy and paste these settings into this photo. I'm happy with that. The lighting is kind of brutal here, and we're gonna bring this to 4x5. Might bring this down a little bit. So here's a little editing hack if you didn't know. When you're going through, if you just want your slider to return to 0, you can just double click it and it'll go back to 0. So you don't have to drag it back and try and get it perfectly on 0, whatever. You can just double tap, beep, and then you'll be back to 0, and you can go crazy with it. So you can come in here with the brush. I might come in here with the brush, and I'm gonna go ahead and turn that feather up a little, not even a little bit, a lot, and bring the size up because we're gonna be making this darker, so you want it to fade in as nice as possible. Come down here and turn on the show selected mask overlay so you can see where you're painting at. Make sure you get everything. Make sure you erase anything you don't want, like this. I don't want a bunch of stuff on her body. Just shooting for the background there. Alright, now we're going to come in here and turn that clarity down. That was just automatically what it started at. Bring that exposure down a touch. Bring down the shadows a little bit. And just darken it up a little bit. Make it a little more moody, if you will. Maybe bring those highlights down a little touch there, if you could. And then we're going to bring her face a little more cropped in nicely. Straighten this out. Done. Alright, here we go. We got a little bit of reflection. I'm not going to copy and paste for this one because that does you guys no good. So, first thing we're going to do, straighten that out a little bit. We want this to line up nicely. Straighten it out. 4x5. I will say you don't always have to go to 4x5. In fact, I wouldn't recommend it. I was just recently thinking about how I crop a lot of photos specifically for Instagram, to the point where I almost have started to shoot only for Instagram. It kind of makes me like a little bit sad in a sense, that like we're kind of like that's where we're at. So don't always just shoot and crop for 4x5. Leave your stuff unedited or uncropped, or post a bad photo sometimes. It doesn't always have to be perfect. But with that being said, we're going to keep this one cropped at 4x5 so that it just flows good. But so here's an example. We have the shade right here. It's kind of hazing her out. That was intentional, but if you wanted to remove that, you could dehaze that a little bit, and it's gonna kind of bring that contrast up a little bit, if you will. It's gonna fuck this up over here, but it will eliminate that. So something you might want to do there would instead be to just use like a spot brush, like so, and then come in here and dehaze. Don't go nuts though, just a little bit. Fade it in well. There you go. Anyway, we're not going to do that because I want that there, but just to show you guys how to do it, trying to make this live stream effective and useful for you guys. But let's go back to not a brush. Going to bring the exposure up a little bit. It's a little bit dark. We have a lot of contrast again, so I'm going to bring this down. The blacks are really heavy here, to the point where I don't really like it. Highlights, those can come down. They're kind of intense. One little thing that you can do, I'm going to bring those shadows up. When you're looking at the whites and the blacks, you can use the, I want to say it's the option key. Yes. Hold down the option key while you click it, and you can pull that slider, and everywhere where it's white, it means it's blown out. So if you really want to technically have the perfect amount of white, you could go until you just start to see it. That's a little bit blown out for me though, so I'm gonna bring it back down. I don't really ever use that, but it is kind of nice for when you're editing outside shots. Same thing with the black. All the stuff that comes through black is now washed out. It's completely black. It's unrecoverable. It's just the most blown out. So when you start to see the whites, when you're doing the white, it means it's blown out. So you can see the yellow there. It's starting to blow out. So I'm going to leave the blacks at plus 13, bringing those up. And then come down here, same thing with the texture. Like I said, we never bring it over 10. Bring that on up. Clarity, I'm going to bring it down a little bit actually. And then, because I just like this being all cloudy and mystical. And then the dehaze, we're going to leave it like I said, because I want to keep that hazy. And I don't know, it almost feels like angelic, if you will, like she's kind of floating. There's two of her. This is the real her, for you guys that don't know. And this is a reflection off the window. This is a window right here that she's leaning against. So that's kind of the one thing that I really like about this photo. The mirror, it's kind of an interesting thing. Not something you see all the time. It's also not a perfect reflection of her. You can kind of catch the shade in her face, and you can see it here. So it's kind of just an interesting, unique take. Bringing down the vibrance, bringing down the saturation a touch. I lied, I'm going to leave it where it's at. And then again, bring them blacks up. Get that little faded look. And then bring that down just a touch. Bring this down. The highlights in this hotel were a little bit brutal, so not the best. And then I'm gonna bring I'm gonna bring that orange up a little bit. Give her like a little bit more tone to her face, kinda, so she doesn't look so ghostly. And I'm gonna call that one done. Okay. Let me get to another kind of look here. Alright, here's another one. Let's go over some things I like about this photo. I like the lines right here. I like how she's positioned to the side. If we come in to crop this, I just like how we have this at a nice, like, I just like how it lands right on her eye, like a good rule of thirds, like almost right in the middle of her face. If we wanted to, we could edit this down and crop it down and move it over and make it a little bit closer. But I like to have a bigger canvas, kinda. Recently I've been shooting a lot more wide angle stuff. Even this is really, really tight, and it almost makes me nervous. But we were in a hotel room, and I had a 50 millimeter, 50. Not a good hotel room lens for all of you guys. If you are shooting in a small room like that, I would recommend using a 24, maybe like a 35. I wouldn't go much below a 20 though. You're gonna get a lot of distortion. You're gonna have your model looking like a octopus, or maybe like a spider. You know, with real long arms. They're gonna be stretched out. You know, their fingers might be like 15 inches long or something. So don't go below, like a 20. I don't know if they make a 22 millimeter, but that would be like, I wouldn't probably even go lower than that. 24 would be good. 24 would be good. 24 would be what I would recommend the most. 35 would be okay. 50, too tight, and that's what I had. But we're gonna go ahead. I like the lighting in here a lot better though. It's a lot softer and not so harsh and intense. But I'm gonna bring the exposure up a little bit. And I'm also gonna, we're not sitting perfectly square on these lines, and that kind of stresses me out. So I'm gonna crop them, rotate the photo a little bit, so they're more straight up and down. That looks a little bit better there. Then we're gonna come in here, contrast. We're gonna bring that down just a touch. We're gonna bring the highlights up a little bit. Shadows are gonna come up a little bit. I'm gonna come in here with the spot brush, lower this feather down, and paint her face and her chest right here. Get that hair. So you're like, what is going on? Why does it look so crazy? And that's just because the clarity is turned way up right now. Turn that down. We're going to come in here, bring that exposure on her face up a little bit. And I'm also going to bring the shadows up again a little bit on her face so that her eyes are a little bit more shadow free. Okay, that looks pretty good. Come down here. Whites, we're going to bring them. Sometimes I just go crazy, you know? What does it look like all the way? What does it look like turned all the way down? You know? Sometimes you see something cool when you just do something stupid, you know? And that's something to live by. Sometimes you see something cool when you do something stupid. Disclaimer on that though. Sometimes you see some really stupid stuff when you do some stupid things too. So, you know, take it with a grain of salt, I guess. I can attest to both ends of the spectrum. Texture, I'm bringing that up a little bit. Clarity, I'm bringing that up a little bit. Dehaze, I'm not going to touch that. Okay. Vibrance, I'm going to bring that up a little bit. A little bit more. There we go. Blacks, bring them up. Oh, fun fact with this one, if you don't like the point you just created, you can double click it and it'll go away. It deletes itself, just like going to 0 again. Bring those up. My photos, just like me, like to have a proper fade to them, you know what I'm saying? And that shout out to Breon the barber, cutting it up real proper. So what I'm doing right now with this is just like a tone curve. So these are the whites, these are the blacks down here, and I'm just adjusting them some more. It's kind of like what this is doing, but it's, I don't know, just a little bit more finesse. If you might, you can add tones wherever you want to do crazy things, but we don't want to do that. Okay, come on down here. I gotta bring my blue light glasses down so I can see what it's looking like. I'm gonna bring the orange up a little bit, give her a little bit more tone to her face, and oh, yeah, we'll leave that there. Okay, that one's done. Same kind of photo, so I'm not gonna edit that one. I'm not gonna edit this one, and I'm not gonna edit this one. I'm not gonna edit that one. I'll edit this one for you guys. This is the last photo for Erica's set. First thing we're gonna do, get in here, crop it. Couple things that I like about this photo, just how she's standing out from the background. It's kind of just like blurred out, faded out, bulk it out. Some things that I don't like about this photo is how we have a light right over the top of her and we have nothing here, and so we're getting really bad shadows on her body. Again, we are at the hotel because there's a snowstorm, and this was in the lobby, and so, you know, we had kind of limited options. We didn't want to be obnoxious, but it's always good to look at your photos. One thing that really has helped me grow, especially when I first started out, was to look at my photos and then look at the photos that I really liked and then compare the two and see what was the difference. Why did my photo not look like their photo, and then how did I fix that? How did I change that? That's kind of how I got into leading lines. But shout out to Peter McKinnon, shout out to Maddie Hapoya, and shout out to Chris Howe. Those guys taught me pretty much everything that I learned for the first 2 years of photography, just watching a lot of YouTube videos. So definitely check those guys out if you guys have any questions. But yeah, always just kind of analyze your photo and see, you got to find the things you don't like about what you're doing so that you can fix them and progress. Because if you only look at the things that you do like, you're really going to limit yourself. Okay, look at this. 4x5. We're going into Instagram. This is like the epitome of rule of thirds euphoria. We got her eyeball right in the dang crosshairs of the rule of thirds. This is like the most aesthetically pleasing you could have it. So you're just going to be staring right into ours. And it really is. It really does look good. And I feel like it really does draw your attention right to her eye. She's giving you the look. so you can't miss it. So I'm gonna bring the exposure up a little bit, but I don't want to go too nuts because I don't want it to get too bright. Bring the contrast down because it's really heavy in here. That's a lot for me. It's heavy on her eyes. We got some heavy shadows in this, so we don't want to, we're trying to bring that up, and so we don't really need a lot of contrast. Like, we're trying to get rid of the contrast right now. We have too much. So the highlights, I'm going to bring those down just because the light is so intense, and then I'm just going to come in with a spot brush and we'll do some stuff to her face and to her body so that it's a little bit brighter. Shadows, bring them suckers up. Like I said, we're trying to get rid of the contrast, we're trying to get rid of the shadows. Okay, I like that. Whites, I'm bringing those down. That light is so intense. Her shirt is white, so when we turn that up, it's going to blow that stuff out, and we don't want to deal with that. We don't want that. Blacks, bringing those up because, again, we're trying to get rid of the contrast. We're trying to make it brighter. And then the texture, I like what we kind of got going on back here. I'm going to bring it up a little bit. Not more than 10, though. Clarity, we're going to bring that up. No, I lied. We're not going to bring the clarity up. And then we'll bring the dehaze up a touch. No, I lied. We're gonna bring the dehaze down a touch. Why would you bring the dehaze up if you're trying to get rid of the contrast? Think about it. Dehazing, if you bring it up, it's gonna add contrast. Vibrance. Vibrance is good for me here. Saturation is good for me here. I like how her skin tone is. I like all the tones here. Bring those blacks up. Now this thing that I do with the blacks, let me I don't know if I said this earlier, but this is just a personal thing that I do. I feel like, you know, everybody kind of has their look, and for me, just like that faded black look has always been kind of my thing. I've always liked how it looks. I've literally always done this to my photos for 3 years now, and I don't know. I feel like it's just like kind of my part of creative clout now. So, but you definitely don't have to do this. And I don't know. I wouldn't recommend doing it to every single photo, but at the same time, I pretty much do, because, like I said, it's my thing. But we'll get back into it here just to finish this up. Ooh, I'm gonna leave that where it's at. Bring the highlights up a touch, and then okay, now we're gonna come in with this spot brush, paint over. Again, this is just clarity at like 50, but we're gonna turn that down. If anybody knows why it does that, like why does Lightroom just save one of like how you used a brush one time as like what you want to use as your brush starting every time until you like change it again drastically and use it a lot. Somebody help me out on that, because that is one thing that I actually really do wonder. Why doesn't it just start out at 0? Why do I gotta disable settings? That doesn't seem logical. So we're gonna come in here and bring up the shadows a little bit, and I'm not gonna lie, I'm gonna do this with the contrast. Yeah. Okay, so I turned the contrast back down to 0 on this because I felt like her face was just a little bit too like faded out, so I undid the contrast. But long story short, I'm gonna call that done. then you can just come on in here and export how you want. How I usually export is just select all the photos that I just edited. Catch that last one. Pop up here to file. Pop in here to export. The last one I did was for Suvi, but these are for Erica. And I'm just going to put Erica Hotel because we shot them at a hotel. Export, and boom, that's done. Okay. So I think I'm going to cut it off here. I'm going to keep on editing, but I got some stuff that I got to edit for Suvi that I do not want to show you guys because it's exclusive until he drops it. So I'm going to hop off here. Thanks to everybody that hopefully watched and tuned in over the course of the live stream. Hopefully this didn't suck, and I'll be doing these probably every day, honestly. I'm just really trying to pump up the content. So if you guys have any questions, feel free to drop those in the comments. I'm happy to make videos addressing all that kind of stuff. So thanks again, and I will see you guys later this week.